Opened a couple of reviews where we're about to talk about necrophilia, kind of. Even though I'm a massive animation fan, I've never seen Tim Burton's Corpse Bride until today. In fact, come to think of it, I'm not sure I've seen any stop-motion films that are actually directed by Tim Burton. I've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, but he didn't actually direct that one. What I do know about this film is that it's about this guy who accidentally marries a corpse when he was supposed to marry a not corpse. So we've got necrophilia and a love triangle. This is fine. I've heard positive things about it, but I was always gun-shy about watching it because it seemed ewy, I guess. Even though I'm pretty desensitized to most contents, there's something about this that just seemed unsettling. Maybe I just need to swallow my hesitations and give it a shot. I don't know if I'm actually gonna like this, but at least I'll get a video out of it, and that's what matters, isn't it? Picked a very interesting time to talk about this movie.
Johnny wrote, "The jury gave me my life back. I am truly humbled." Amber said, "The disappointment I feel today is beyond words."
Another thing I've heard about this movie is they try to make the living world seem boring while the Land of the Dead is more bright and fun. Is more of an optimistic view of the afterlife. Looks like they're doing something very different in that cart.
That is stumbling without a penny to their name, just like you and me.
They're broke and yet you have a maid? How did poverty work back then? And they have a butler too, apparently.
Do you suppose your father and I like each other? Surely you must. A little.
Of course not.
You think after watching their marriage for so long, their daughter would want to do something entirely different. So the girl's parents actually don't like the other family, but they want the marriage to happen for the money. But the guy's parents don't seem to have any disdain for the girl's parents, and the guy's parents don't seem to have any ulterior motives besides getting their son married. So his parents are slightly better, but they're still scummy because they're trying to get him into a marriage where I'm assuming they've never met before. I'm getting the sense that she's going to be one of my lesser hated love triangle third wheels. I never like love triangles, but she seems to be a victim in this more than anything. And she's sort of almost, I would say, willing victim. Like, she doesn't realize how terrible the things is being done to her.
Mother won't let me near the piano. Music is improper for a young lady. Too passionate, she says.
Passion, exactly what do you want a young lady to have?
You shouldn't be alone together.
It's not like they should meet the person they're going to marry.
Again. With this hand I will lift.
3 hours later.
Come at once.
Master and daughter from the beginning. Again.
Oh,
With this.
I was thinking for a second there that they said they were marrying tomorrow, but this is just rehearsal.
Marriage. Marriage is what brings us together today.
This candle.
Just hold it there a little longer. Their attitudes towards marriage are certainly not something you see much of these days. Seem to be satirizing how things were back then more than how they are today. Well, today, when this movie was made. When was this movie made? 2005. So I'm assuming this was not much of a thing back in 2005. Did you just put it out with an alcoholic beverage? That's not... That wouldn't... She should have burst into flames.
This wasn't the first time that you talked about Amber hitting the wall hard.
Hitting the wall hard based on the accusations that she brought. I'm sorry, I was talking. Is that all right?
You'd answer my question. We'll take a look at the next exhibit.
As long as you're happy, sir.
So Victor and Victoria seem to both be pleasant people that could theoretically have a happy marriage despite the circumstances in which they got engaged.
This is a pathetic attempt.
The next article, Johnny Depp's financial woes might sink the next Pirates of the Caribbean. Did I read that right?
You did. I don't know
The
how
next
my
article,
financial woes would do
May
that.
20.
Really shouldn't be all that difficult. It's just a few simple vows.
It seems like he's not getting it down because his subconscious doesn't want to go through with this. It was interesting because he was hitting it off with Victoria, but they still haven't gotten to know each other that well. These lines aren't really that hard to remember. It could be that he is just that much of a scatterbrain, though.
I will set your mother on fire.
Well, that's pretty romantic considering who her mother is. I would burn her mother.
With this ring, I ask you to be mine.
The ravens know that he's done it.
I do.
Why, though? She doesn't seem to be getting the hints. So why would she be willing to go through with that when she doesn't know him? She has no affiliation with his family or anything. She doesn't know if he's rich or not.
You may kiss the bride.
I don't think that was consensual.
Your rival!
Did she kill him?
Fainted.
By Jove, man! Looks like we got ourselves a breather.
Hang on.
And then, baby, everything went black.
So she was killed, and according to the story, she waited there, and then she saw the figure of someone, and she went black, and then everything went black. She was supposed to meet up with this guy she was intending to marry, and then she got killed by someone who showed up. They said that she waited and waited and waited, so it's possible that I'm in the middle of a conspiracy theory. So it's possible that the guy she was planning to marry never actually showed up because, as implied by the fact that she was waiting for so long. And then it's possible that the murderer isn't actually the guy she was planning to marry. Now, well, that's possible. So there's two possibilities here. One is that the guy she was intending to marry was the killer, and her father was right to try to steal her away from him. The second possibility is that her dad murdered her for defying his orders and trying to marry the guy. And he could have murdered the guy too, since he never showed up, maybe. From what I've seen outside watching this movie, it seems like Victor ending up with the corpse bride was the foregone conclusion. But I'm kind of getting the sense that maybe they're gonna pull the guy back, pull back the guy who she was going to marry when she was alive, and turns out he was innocent. And then Victor could still end up with Victoria, maybe. Again, I've never seen this film, so you might be rolling your eyes at my very wrong theories. Well, you might be saying, well, Victor's already married to the corpse bride. Well, not according to the law and not according to religious traditions, they're not married. That was so unofficial. First of all, there was no justice of the peace. Second of all, there was no witnesses. Third of all, he didn't do that on purpose. I'm pretty sure it's universal that if you're not going through with the marriage willingly, then it doesn't count. Like, I mean, if you're being forced into the marriage, it doesn't count. He was chased down to get that kiss, so that was unconsensual. And he wasn't saying those words to her, really. He put the ring on her finger, yes, but he thought that that was a branch. In his mind, he was thinking about Victoria, so he wasn't really directing what he was saying towards her. He didn't even know she existed. So legally, there's a million loopholes that say he's not married. So she was just waiting for either the guy she was planning to marry earlier or just any guy to come marry her. So things are looking a little bit bleak for our guy Victor. He's got one fiance that he's been arranged with, and he's got a bride that he's been put into against his will.
Very poor choice of words.
And he's got a bride that he's been married to against his will. And neither of these options are actually his choice. So the backstory does explain why she was willing to marry him. It's because she would take literally anyone.
Mystery woman? He doesn't even know any women.
Poor guy. I wonder whose fault that is.
Did you provide a copy of this pamphlet to Amber Heard?
I did not. I did not identify her as a victim of domestic violence.
Is that the sole reason why you did not give that to Amber Heard?
Yes, we only give them to victims of domestic violence.
He's not my boyfriend. He's my husband. Victor, where have you gone?
Rip that thing out, please. He had some skills and he was able to do that. In the trailer for this film, I think the narrator said something like, she's both beautiful and scary. I mean, well, if you look at the right places, she's... Well, at least it won't shed everywhere.
My dog Scraps!
Wait, did you have this dog before when it was alive?
Since we're, married, you should definitely meet her. And my father, too. We should go and see them right now.
Oh, what a fantastic
Are you getting into this, or are you tricking her? If he was saying that just so he can trick her into getting to the living world again, then I award him 10 points. If he was actually starting to warm up to this involuntary marriage to this corpse that he was murdered into, then I deduct 10 points. Like, once he gets to the living world, he better be like, psych, and then pushes her off to the cliff.
Sir, I beg you to help. It means so much to me. Us?
Oh, he is tricking her. Good, good, good. I never liked how in Afterlife movies they always have, well, not all. They sometimes have the people in the afterlife retaining their earthly battle damage or earthly flaws. I think in these afterlife movies it would be more interesting if they had a version of their body that's like all the good things but none of the bad things, I guess. This movie's supposed to be dark and morbid, so they're gotta look like dead bodies, I guess. Well, it's not really that morbid, I should say. It looks dark and morbid, but it's kind of cheery, actually.
Ready? Just remember, when you want to come back, say hopscotch.
You just have to go for the rest of your life without saying hopscotch.
You know, he is no good.
Finally.
Go. Victoria, Victor, happy to see you.
You're not gonna believe this.
But then on meeting you, I felt I should be with you always. And our wedding could not come soon enough.
Victor, I feel the same.
Victoria, I seem to find myself married.
Darling?
Honestly, I'm liking Victoria more.
I'm his wife.
No, you're not.
Victoria, wait, you don't understand. She's dead.
Objection, hearsay.
I don't like her.
I thought this was all going so well.
What gave you that idea? The fact that he was running away from you?
Why can't you understand? It was a mistake. I would never marry you.
You just gotta be honest about this.
You've got a wonderful personality.
Nah, I don't know about that.
The sole redeeming feature from that little creature is that she's alive.
No, there's more. Victoria is sweet and optimistic and romantic, and she might not know how to play the piano, but she wants to. She could certainly get lessons. She has the passion for it, even though her mother doesn't want her to. And she didn't murder Victor, or chase after him, or trick him into a marriage, or force him back to the afterlife.
Victor is married to a dead woman.
Victor was in your room.
I have to help him.
The scandal.
That's your takeaway from that? Taking control of your life now?
What are you doing here? You should be at home, prostrate with grief.
There must be some way to undo what's been done.
I believe I know the thing to do. Is speaking in tongues of unholy alliances. A mind has come undone, I fear.
You disappoint me. I thought you were going to be our hero.
I was betrothed some years ago, but tragedy snatched my young bride away.
You!
When one lives alone, wealth counts.
So he's the guy that Corpse Bride was going to marry originally. I'm kind of getting villain vibes from his presentation, so he's probably the murderer.
You shall marry Lord Bacchus tomorrow.
Now, what you often see with arranged marriages in movies is they sort of separate the fact that they want to be each other from the fact that they are arranged to marry. For example, in Sleeping Beauty, Aurora and Philip fell in love thinking that they were not the person that they were betrothed to. In this movie, they started out with Victoria and Victor being arranged to be married, and then they flipped it so that she's betrothed to someone else. So now she has to defy the parents' arrangements. Now what they're doing with Emily is she thinks that what Victoria has going for her is that she's alive and thus has more in common with Victor. By the way, their names are so similar because they're supposed to be, because it's thematic of them being so similar to each other. And even their personalities are a little bit similar. So to Emily, this is a question of, can she be happy with someone who's different from her, or would he be happier with someone who's similar to him? But there's really more to consider than that. Emily is looking at this from a perspective of similarities, while I'm looking at it more from a standpoint of consent and willingness and morality. And Victor is already in love with Victoria, and he has basically no reason to be in love with Emily apart from the fact that she gave him the dog. The fact that she gave him a dog does not make up for her being the way she is. She is completely inconsiderate of his feelings. Emily even considers herself the victim in this situation that she manufactured. She could have just not say I do in the marriage thing. Obviously, she should have been able to recognize that that was a mistake, or she should have been able to realize that he wasn't talking to her. So this is really her fault, and I can't sympathize with her. And yes, she's lonely, but was there no one in the underworld that she could have been happy with?
You had to stop this union until death do us part. And that will come sooner than you think.
My conspiracy theory was way off then. So beneath the surface, they do have things in common, like their piano playing ability. Victor and Victoria are meant to have things that are like obvious in common, like their names, but they have to dig more to see what they have in common. So the fact that he has blue skin proves that Victor's not actually dead yet. These people in the dead world seem to reflect how their body is. So I was thinking that Victor could be dead, and he still looks that way because his body hasn't decomposed yet. But now that we see that this guy just died and he immediately has blue or purplish blue skin, so that must mean that Victor isn't really dead yet.
Miss Victoria. Yes, how is she? Well, she's getting married this evening. What? But how could she?
Women.
It's not her fault, Victor. It didn't make her dress as sexy as Emily's because this is a bad idea wedding, I guess. The reason is because this wedding is not sexy. This is a very not good thing that's happening, so they want the tone of the dress to reflect that because it looks hideous. Emily's dress is obviously very low cut. Hers goes all the way up to her neck. In this universe, does that mean that you better not say it?
Man and wife. Say man and wife.
Man and wife.
What is marriage in this universe? She didn't say nothing. Somewhere out there, a lawyer is pulling his hair out.
This old man said man in life.
Did you say I do?
Oh, no. Sort of skipped that part.
Then you're not married. If you didn't say it, you didn't do it.
There is a complication with your marriage.
Okay.
The vows are binding, until death do you part.
I like where you're going with this.
Death has already parted you.
Aha!
Victor would have to give up the life he had forever. He would need to repeat his vows in the land of the living and drink from the wine of ages. This would stop his heart forever. Only then would he be free to give it to you.
But why would you want to do that? You're not gonna volunteer, are you?
I'll do it.
No! I want to say, out of all the legal loopholes they could have found to explain that they're not married, they went with the death do you part thing. When that was, in my mind, I was thinking that the until death do you part wouldn't apply because they haven't died since the wedding. But, I mean, he could have pulled up his book and say, you technically aren't married because you didn't consent to it, or you didn't get married because there was no officially ordained person there. There's no witnesses or anything. And no, they went with this. Am I supposed to be rooting for this? Because I'm not. We have a marriage here where the bride would just marry anyone who would propose to her, accidentally or not, and then you have the groom who's only into this because he's thinking that Victoria wants to marry someone else when she doesn't. Like, he's blaming Victoria for something that's not her fault, and that's why he's marrying Emily. So why am I supposed to root for these two to be married? I usually say that you want the protagonist and the endgame love interest to spend a lot of time together, and I recognize that Victor has spent more time with Emily than with Victoria, but when you look at the principles of their relationships, there's just no contest. Victoria wants to help while Emily wants to force him into her.
Very poor choice of words.
And Emily wants to have her way by forcing herself on Victor. I mean, she did say that she could never ask Victor to kill himself so they could be married for real. But, I mean, that's hardly a point in her favor. I mean, I'm sure that Victoria would not poison him either. This is why you don't want to do love triangles, because I'm so upset. I hope she kills him. That would be nice.
Isn't it true that while he was on the mezzanine level and Miss Heard and her sister were there, that he was reaching for Amber's hair while he was trying to hit her with that cast, correct?
That is not correct.
And it's possible that she was standing in between Mr. Depp and Miss Heard then, correct?
No.
Well, in fact, you saw Mr. Depp push or shove Whitney Heard, correct?
Absolutely not.
And it was only after Mr. Depp pushed Whitney that Amber stepped forward and punched him in the face. Isn't that right?
That is not correct.
It's like a shotgun wedding in reverse. It's where you die if you do go through with it.
Victor?
For I will be your wife.
Object. Object, object. Object. No. Ask if anyone objects. Emily is not worth dying for. Emily, are you going to do the right thing?
For I will be.
No, you're not. Wait, are you going to do the right thing? Oh.
My dreams were taken from. No.
I've stolen them from someone else.
Phew. Now you just need to kill what's-his-face and you'll be all good.
You!
But I left you.
Yeah, it really sucks when you're killed by the person you married.
My dear.
Get out.
No, you need to kill him.
Leaving. But first, a toast!
Nobody tell him. He doesn't know that it's poison. They all know and no one's gonna tell him.
Oh, Victor.
It's funny. At the beginning of the film, I said that Victoria was probably going to be one of my lesser hated third wheels in Love Triangle. The funny thing is, but I actually did hate the third wheel. I just didn't realize that the third wheel was Emily.
You set me free.
Might want to watch that first. Don't get me wrong, I want you two to get married, but can I wait until you get a different dress because that one's not doing you? Oh, we're not gonna see the wedding. We're not gonna see the wedding that we actually. The one wedding that we want to happen is one we're not gonna see. Maybe it's because they need more time to get to know each other before they can have a good wedding. So that was the corpse bride. So at the end of the film, Emily was, I guess, coming to peace with the fact that she's not going to marry a living person. I wasn't really looking at this as... I wasn't really judging their marriage the way I would normally judge a living person marrying an actual corpse. I kind of saw the fact that he was alive and she was dead as an allegory for two people having differences. I think when they had them almost get married was supposed to speak to the fact that two people can have a happy marriage even if they have differences. And as we've seen, they do have other stuff in common. I didn't really get the vibe that Emily was realizing she's not right for Victor as much as she was realizing that Victoria is the one he really wants to be with. And she's right. The only reason Victor wanted to marry Emily is because he was wrongfully blaming Victoria for the marriage. For the marriage between Victoria and what's-his-face. I forget his name. Emily was saying at the end that she lost her dream to be married, which, I mean, that might be, like, not allegorical. I mean, I don't know if they're saying you should be at peace if you die having never married, but in a way she did sort of get something close to... She said that Victor set her free, so she did kind of get something satisfactory out of this. I guess a moral of this story is, if it's too late for you, don't drag someone else down with you. They never really answered the question of why can't Emily marry someone in the underworld, someone else who's dead. I guess Emily's wish was to marry someone who's living, and she sort of got validation that she could marry someone who's living, or someone No, she didn't, because he was going to die. Personally, as I was watching this, I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't seeing this like it's a living person and an actual corpse. And when I was comparing Emily to Victoria, the fact that Emily was dead was barely part of the equation in my mind. I kept thinking about the circumstances and the people. I kept judging them by their actions, which I'm not sure if I was supposed to do that. I'd like to think I was supposed to. And I think another thing that Emily realized, or might have realized in the end, is that she's not right for Victor, and she really doesn't have a real connection with him that's based on their actual personalities. It's just she just wanted someone to marry her, and she just picked whoever proposed to her by accident first. I certainly hope they were not trying to push this idea that Emily and Victor shouldn't get married because of cultural differences, because there's tons of healthy, happy marriages that have cultural differences in the equation. There really are two different ways to look at this love triangle. One is to look at it from the perspective of their backgrounds, and the other is to look at them as individuals. And if you're going by individuals, then yes, Victoria is the clear choice. But if you're going by cultural differences, that shouldn't really be an obstacle. I mean, obviously you can't marry an actual corpse when you're alive, but again, I was sort of looking at this as allegorical. The real life equivalent of this would be someone from America and someone from Mexico, which obviously that can work. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and to know how marriage actually works.